Tony Mancini, Joe Ricci, and the crew of daring criminals had one thing in common: a master plan to pull off the greatest robbery in history. They thought they had covered every angle, planned every detail, and escaped without a trace. But when the heist was over, the money was gone, and so was their freedom. The missing millions would haunt them, and their perfect crime would unravel piece by piece in a thrilling tale of betrayal, greed, and shocking twists. Would they ever get away with it? Or would their mistakes catch up to them? On a cold January night in 1950, the quiet streets of Boston masked the brewing of what would become one of the most daring heists in American history. The target was the Brinks Armored Car Depot, a fortress-like facility that served as a hub for millions of dollars in cash and securities. For most, the depot was impenetrable, its reputation bolstered by layers of security, armed guards, and heavy steel vaults. But for Tony Mancini and his crew, it represented the ultimate prize, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pull off the perfect crime. Tony Mancini was no ordinary criminal. He was a man with an unmatched attention to detail, someone who lived by the principle that success depended on preparation. For over a year, Mancini meticulously planned every aspect of the heist. He assembled a team of skilled professionals, each chosen for their specific expertise. One was a lockpicker with a reputation for cracking even the most secure safes, while another was an ex-armored car driver who knew the depot's layout and routines like the back of his hand. Each member was carefully vetted for their loyalty, skill, and ability to stay silent under pressure. The planning began with reconnaissance. The team spent months observing the depot, taking note of every detail: the guards' shifts, the delivery schedules, and even the daily habits of the employees. They learned when the vaults were most vulnerable. Just before closing time, when cash was counted and left temporarily unsecured. The team used disguises to blend in, posing as delivery men and repair workers to gain access to the building without raising suspicion. Before entering the building, the team used disguises to blend in, posing as delivery men and repair workers to gain access to the building without raising suspicion. Mancini also secured the necessary tools for the job. He insisted on using high-quality equipment, including custom-made lock-picking kits and radio scanners to monitor police communications. He even ensured the crew had access to stolen Brinks uniforms, allowing them to walk into the depot as if they belonged. Every detail was rehearsed, down to the route they would take to escape and the places they would stash the stolen money. Despite their careful planning, there was always the risk of something going wrong. To minimize this, Mancini imposed strict rules on his crew. They were forbidden from drinking or speaking about the job to anyone outside the group. Each member had a specific role, and rehearsals were conducted repeatedly to ensure everyone knew their part. Failure to follow instructions, Mancini warned, could lead to disaster. By the time the night of the heist arrived, the team was a well-oiled machine. Mancini's confidence was unwavering. He knew the risks, but he also believed they had thought of everything. They would enter through a side door, disable the guards, and empty the vault in less than half an hour. The stolen cash would be hidden in a safe house, untouched for years to avoid suspicion. For Mancini, the heist wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that, with enough planning and precision, even the most secure fortress could be breached. What Mancini didn't account for, however, was the unpredictable nature of human greed and the cracks that would begin to form within his crew after the job was done. The perfect plan, it seemed, was only perfect in theory. On January 17, 1950, the city of Boston was blanketed in a sharp winter chill. As most residents huddled indoors, the Brinks armored car depot prepared for its nightly routine of securing millions of dollars in cash and valuables. Unbeknownst to the guards on duty, a group of masked men was finalizing their preparations for what would become one of the most infamous robberies in American history. The heist had been timed to perfection. The crew, dressed in stolen Brinks uniforms and armed with insider knowledge of the depot's operations, approached the building under the cover of darkness. The side door, identified during months of reconnaissance as the weakest entry point, had been left unlocked earlier in the evening by a member of the crew who had disguised himself as a maintenance worker. Now, the streets quiet and the depot winding down for the night, the plan was set in motion. The men moved quickly and with purpose, slipping through the side door in a single file. Each wore a rubber mask and gloves to ensure no identifying traces were left behind. Inside, the building was dimly lit, and the guards, believing the depot to be secure, were caught completely off guard. Within moments, they were overpowered, tied up, and blindfolded. The robbers had rehearsed this part of the plan extensively, knowing that speed and precision were their greatest assets. With the guards neutralized, the crew turned their attention to the vault. Despite its reputation as a fortress, the vault's security system was no match for their preparation. Using custom-made tools and detailed knowledge of the locking mechanisms, the safecracker of the group worked quickly to open the heavy steel door. The other members stood watch, ensuring no alarms were triggered and no signs of their presence were left behind. When the vault door finally swung open, the crew was greeted by their prize, stacks of cash, coins, and securities, meticulously arranged and ready for the taking. The men moved with practiced efficiency, stuffing the money into duffel bags they had brought for the occasion. Despite the temptation to take everything in sight, they adhered to their plan, focusing only on the most valuable and lightweight items. The heist lasted less than 30 minutes. As the crew exited the depot, they left behind no signs of forced entry or disturbance beyond the bound and gagged guards. They carried their loot to a waiting getaway vehicle parked several blocks away, choosing a nondescript sedan to avoid drawing attention. Every step of their escape route had been carefully mapped out, ensuring they blended seamlessly into the quiet Boston streets. By the time the depot's remaining staff discovered what had happened, the robbers were already miles away, the stolen money safely hidden in a prearranged location. The audacity and precision of the heist left authorities stunned. It was a flawless operation, executed in near silence, leaving no witnesses or clues behind. For the robbers, the night of the heist was a triumph, a testament to their meticulous planning and discipline. But beneath the surface, cracks were already beginning to form, as greed and mistrust quietly threatened to unravel their carefully constructed victory. In the days following the Brinks robbery, the quiet streets of Boston erupted into chaos. News of the heist spread like wildfire, with headlines declaring it the largest cash robbery in American history. The public was shocked by the audacity of the crime, while authorities were left scrambling for answers. The FBI, known for its rigorous investigative techniques, quickly assumed control of the case, launching a manhunt that would stretch on for years. The initial scene at the depot provided little for investigators to work with. The robbers had been meticulous, leaving behind no fingerprints, footprints, or physical evidence. The guards, who had been overpowered, could only describe the robbers as wearing masks and gloves, their faces and identities completely concealed. Even the vault's locking mechanisms, which had been expertly bypassed, bore no signs of tampering. It was as if the robbers had simply vanished into thin air. With no immediate leads, the FBI began examining the robbery's logistics. The precision of the heist suggested that it was not the work of amateurs, but of seasoned criminals with insider knowledge of Brink's operations. agents turned their attention to former employees, contractors, and anyone with access to the depot. Hundreds of interviews were conducted, but none yielded concrete evidence. Investigators also scrutinized the stolen money itself, much of which included marked bills and negotiable securities. These marked items were intended to act as a trail, allowing authorities to track the robbers if they attempted to spend or cash them. Weeks turned into months, but the stolen money remained uncirculated. A clear indication that the robbers were intentionally lying low and avoiding any activity that could draw attention to them. Frustrated but undeterred, the FBI expanded its scope, targeting known criminal networks in the Boston area. Informants were deployed and surveillance operations were initiated on suspected gang members. Despite the efforts, the robbers remained elusive. Their discipline and silence were extraordinary, and their apparent lack of mistakes made the investigators' job nearly impossible. Then, a year into the investigation, a faint glimmer of hope appeared. A local tipster claimed to have overheard a man at a bar boasting about his involvement in the heist. The man, Joe Ricci, was quickly brought in for questioning. While Ricci denied any involvement, agents began to monitor his movements closely. They discovered that he had connections to several known criminals, including Tony Mancini, a figure who had already been on their radar. As the FBI focused on Mancini and his crew, they noticed small inconsistencies. Members of the gang were spending cautiously, but not without drawing suspicion. A few began purchasing luxury items or making small but unusual investments, raising red flags. The FBI also received a crucial break when a low-ranking member of the crew, feeling slighted over his share of the loot, began talking to acquaintances about the crime. By 1955, with the statute of limitations for the robbery nearing its expiration, the FBI made their move. Several members of the gang were arrested, and under pressure, one finally broke. His confession unraveled the carefully constructed web of silence, leading to the recovery of a portion of the stolen money. Though much of the fortune was never found, the FBI's dogged investigation had finally cracked the case, bringing one of history's most notorious robberies to an end. For 5 years, the robbers behind the Great Brinks robbery had managed to stay one step ahead of the authorities. Their discipline was remarkable, their silence impenetrable. Every member of the crew understood the importance of laying low until the statute of limitations expired. If they could maintain their secrecy until January 1956, the law would no longer be able to prosecute them for the crime. It seemed like the perfect plan. But perfection is fragile, and the cracks began to show when greed, impatience, and mistrust crept in. The first signs of trouble came with Joe Ricci, one of the lower-ranking members of the crew. While the others were careful not to draw attention to themselves, Ricci couldn't resist flaunting his newfound wealth. He began spending more freely than was wise, purchasing luxury items and gambling heavily. His sudden change in lifestyle didn't go unnoticed. Local law enforcement began to take an interest in his activities, and although they couldn't immediately connect him to the Brinks robbery, his name was quietly added to a growing list of suspects. Ricci's behavior wasn't the only issue. Within the group, tensions had started to rise. The gang's leader, Tony Mancini, had initially distributed the stolen money in locked boxes, instructing everyone not to touch their share until the statute of limitations had expired. For years, the money remained hidden, gathering dust in basements, attics, and safety deposit boxes. But as time passed, some members of the crew grew restless. One of the robbers, feeling emboldened by the lack of police progress, began dipping into his share. Small purchases escalated into larger ones, and eventually word of his spending habits leaked into the criminal underworld. Rumors swirled about the source of his wealth, and it wasn't long before the FBI caught wind of the whispers. Investigators had been closely monitoring known criminals with connections to the Brinks depot, and this new lead provided a much-needed spark in their stagnant case. The most damaging mistake, however, came from within the gang itself. Mistrust began to poison their once tight bond. Certain members believed they were entitled to a larger share of the loot, while others accused their comrades of betraying the group's code of silence. Heated arguments and fractured alliances created an environment ripe for betrayal. Eventually, the pressure became too much for one member of the crew. Angry over his perceived misdeeds, the aftermath of the Great Brinks robbery was as dramatic as the heist itself, marked by arrests, betrayals, and unanswered questions. For years, the robbers had managed to stay ahead of the authorities, but once the cracks in their plan began to show, their downfall was inevitable. By 1955, just before the statute of limitations was set to expire, the FBI made its move, arresting key members of the gang and dismantling their carefully constructed operation. The trial became a nationwide spectacle, capturing the attention of the media and the public. The defendants, many of whom had been living unremarkable lives to avoid suspicion, were now thrust into the spotlight. The prosecution laid out the meticulous planning and execution of the heist, highlighting the gang's audacity and precision. However, it was the betrayal of one member, a lower-ranking participant in the robbery, that proved to be the turning point. His confession provided the FBI with the evidence they needed to link the crew to the crime, sealing their fate in court. One by one, the gang members were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The mastermind, Tony Mancini, received a particularly harsh sentence, given his central role in orchestrating the crime. Mancini's stoicism throughout the trial earned him a strange mix of admiration and disdain. He never revealed the location of the missing money, nor did he betray any of his associates who weren't already caught. Despite the convictions, a significant portion of the stolen money, over $1 million, was never recovered. This missing fortune became a mystery that intrigued the public and authorities alike. Rumors circulated that the money had been hidden in remote locations, buried in secret caches, or even smuggled out of the country. Treasure hunters and amateur sleuths devoted years to searching for the lost loot, but their efforts yielded nothing. The fate of the missing money remains one of the most tantalizing aspects of the Brinks robbery. The gang's downfall also sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The robbery had been seen as the pinnacle of professional crime, an example of what could be achieved with careful planning and discipline. But the aftermath served as a cautionary tale. It underscored the inevitability of human error, the corrosive effects of greed, and the dangers of trusting too many people with a shared secret. For the FBI, the successful resolution of the case was a triumph, a testament to the agency's persistence and investigative prowess. The Brinks robbery became a textbook example of how even the most well-planned crimes could be unraveled by relentless determination and the smallest of mistakes. As the years passed, the legend of the Brinks robbery continued to grow. It inspired books, movies, and countless retellings, cementing its place in the annals of American crime history. While justice had been served, the mystery of the missing money and the audacity of the heist ensured that the story would never be forgotten. Even today, it remains a symbol of both criminal ingenuity and the ultimate cost of overreaching ambition. The Great Brinks robbery left an indelible mark on American history, its legacy echoing through the decades as a story of daring ambition and inevitable downfall. Though the FBI succeeded in capturing most of the gang and securing convictions, the case remained shrouded in mystery, largely due to the missing $1 million that was never recovered. The fate of the hidden fortune fueled endless speculation, giving rise to countless theories about secret caches and unclaimed wealth. Treasure hunters, inspired by the story, searched in vain for clues, but the money remained elusive, a ghost of the crime that had stunned the nation. For the robbers, the dream of pulling off the perfect crime had ended in betrayal and imprisonment. Tony Mancini, the mastermind, became an enduring figure of fascination. His silence about the missing money and his refusal to implicate anyone beyond those already caught only deepened the intrigue surrounding him. Mancini died in prison years later, taking his secrets with him and leaving behind a legacy of both brilliance and hubris. Brink's robbery also served as a turning point for law enforcement. The case demonstrated the importance of forensic science, persistent surveillance, and the careful analysis of human behavior. It was a lesson in how even the most carefully executed plans could unravel when confronted with the unpredictable nature of people. As time passed, the heist evolved from a headline-grabbing crime to a modern legend. Its audacity, precision, and the enduring mystery of the missing money continue to captivate audiences. The Great Brinks Robbery stands as a testament to the thin line between triumph and failure, a reminder that even the most brilliant schemes are rarely immune to the flaws of those who carry them out.